Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop chasing someone, they suddenly start paying attention? The moment you choose peace over drama, self-respect over begging, and growth over waiting, something changes. Not just within you, but within him too. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing that their value will always be recognized simply because they are present. The truth is, familiarity often causes appreciation to fade. When you are constantly available, constantly giving, and constantly showing up for someone, they can begin to see your efforts as normal rather than special. It doesn't necessarily mean they are a bad person. It simply means that human nature sometimes overlooks what is always within reach. When you choose to walk away peacefully, something important happens. The daily comfort of your presence disappears. The conversations that once filled their day are no longer there. The emotional support they relied on becomes unavailable. The encouragement, understanding, and care they once received without thinking suddenly become noticeable because they are missing. What was once taken for granted now stands out in its absence. Many people never fully understand the impact someone has on their life until they experience life without them. The silence where your voice used to be creates reflection. The empty spaces where your energy once existed force them to confront a reality they may have ignored. They begin remembering the little things you did, the moments you shared, and the consistency you brought into their life. What makes this even more powerful is that you are not leaving with anger, arguments, or attempts to prove a point. You are simply choosing yourself. That calm departure often leaves a stronger impression than emotional reactions ever could. Instead of focusing on your flaws, they start remembering your strengths. Instead of noticing what you lacked, they begin recognizing what you contributed. The distance gives them a new perspective. They start comparing the peace, loyalty, and support you offered with the reality they now face. In that comparison, your value becomes clearer than ever before. What once seemed ordinary suddenly becomes rare, and what they once assumed would always be, there now feels like something they may never find again. There is something incredibly powerful about a person who chooses peace instead of chasing after someone who is pulling away. Most people expect emotional reactions when a relationship begins to change. They expect repeated messages, endless explanations, emotional confrontations, or desperate attempts to hold everything together. When you refuse to participate in that cycle and instead choose peace, you immediately stand apart from what most people expect. Walking away peacefully sends a message that words often cannot express. It shows that you value yourself enough not to beg for attention, affection, or commitment. It demonstrates emotional maturity and confidence, rather than trying to force someone to see your worth. You trust that your value exists whether they recognize it or not. That kind of self-respect is rare, and rare things naturally attract attention. Many people mistake peace for weakness, but true peace requires strength. It takes strength to remain calm when your emotions are pulling you in a different direction. It takes strength to stop checking for messages, stop looking for signs, and stop making someone else the center of your world. When a man sees that you are capable of moving forward without creating drama, it challenges the image he may have had of you. Instead of watching you fight to keep him, he watches you focus on your own happiness. Instead of seeing desperation, he sees confidence. Instead of witnessing emotional dependence, he sees independence. That shift often creates curiosity because people are naturally drawn to those who seem secure within themselves. The more you invest your energy into your growth, your goals, and your peace of mind, the more noticeable that energy becomes. Confidence has a quiet power. It doesn't demand attention, yet it attracts it. It doesn't chase, yet it often gets pursued. Your peaceful attitude shows that your happiness is not controlled by another person's bias or choices. When someone realizes they can no longer influence your emotions the way they once did, they begin to see you differently. The calmness they expected to be temporary becomes a reminder that you are stronger, wiser, and far more valuable than they originally understood. Attention is one of the most valuable gifts a person can give. yet it is often underestimated until it disappears. In many relationships, a woman gives her time, energy, care, encouragement, and emotional support so consistently that it becomes part of a man's everyday life. He grows accustomed to knowing that she will answer the call, respond to the message, listen to his problems, celebrate his victories, and stand beside him during difficult moments. Over time, what was once appreciated can begin to feel expected. When you walk away peacefully, that steady flow of attention suddenly stops. The good morning messages are no longer there. The random check-ins disappear. The emotional reassurance he once relied on becomes unavailable. At first, he may not fully notice the difference because habits take time to break. But as days pass, the absence becomes impossible to ignore. People often realize the value of attention only when they no longer receive it. The energy you invested in him created a sense of comfort and familiarity. Once that comfort is removed, he begins to feel the gap it leaves behind. The conversations that brightened his day are gone. The person who genuinely cared about his well-being is no longer reaching out. The support he once had access to without effort is no longer guaranteed. This creates a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of wondering whether you still care, he starts wondering why you stopped. Instead of feeling secure in your availability, he begins to question whether he has lost it. Human nature tends to pay closer attention to what feels scarce than to what feels guaranteed. As he experiences life without your consistent attention, memories begin to surface. He recalls the kindness, encouragement, and emotional connection you brought into his world. The things he once overlooked suddenly seem meaningful. The attention he assumed would always be there now feels valuable because it is no longer freely available. Your absence teaches a lesson that your presence could not. It reveals the true impact of the energy you contributed and reminds him that genuine care is not something that should ever be taken for granted. The realization often becomes the very reason he starts moving toward you again, but hoping to regain what he once failed to fully appreciate. One of the most unexpected things that happens when you walk away peacefully is that you begin to grow in ways you never imagined. Instead of spending your energy worrying about someone's choices, you start investing that energy back into yourself. The time you once spent overthinking conversations, waiting for messages, or trying to fix a relationship becomes available for something far more important, your own personal development. Growth has a way of changing everything. When you focus on your goals, your confidence starts to increase. When you dedicate yourself to learning, improving, and creating a better future, you begin to discover strengths that were hidden beneath disappointment and heartbreak. Little by little, you become stronger emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You stop defining yourself by who stayed or who left, and you start defining yourself by who you are becoming. As your life improves, people notice. They notice the confidence in the way you carry yourself. They notice the positive energy you bring into every room. They notice that you are no longer waiting for someone else's approval to feel worthy. The transformation becomes visible, not because you are trying to impress anyone, but because genuine growth naturally shines through your actions. For a man who once had access to you, seeing this change can be eye-opening. He remembers the version of you that was focused on the relationship, but now he sees someone who is focused on building a meaningful and fulfilling life. That contrast often forces him to reflect on what he lost. He begins to recognize qualities he may have overlooked when you were still available to him. Every day, success, happiness, and confidence have a powerful effect because they cannot be faked for long. They are evidence that you chose healing instead of bitterness and progress instead of regret. The more fulfilled you become, the more obvious it becomes that walking away did not break you, it strengthened you. Watching someone rise after a difficult chapter often creates admiration and respect. The person who thought you would remain stuck begins to realize that you have moved forward. In that realization, He starts questioning whether letting you go was one of the biggest mistakes he ever made. Many people do not change their behavior until they are forced to face the consequences of their raw actions. As long as someone continues to receive the same love, attention, and commitment regardless of how they behave, there is very little reason for them to reflect on what they are doing wrong. When forgiveness is unlimited and access is guaranteed, accountability often disappears. That is why walking away peacefully can become such a powerful turning point. It creates a reality that can no longer be ignored. For the first time, he experiences what life feels like without the person who was consistently there for him. The comfort, support, and emotional security he once enjoyed are no longer available whenever he wants them. Suddenly, his choices have visible consequences. This is not about punishment or revenge. It is not about making someone suffer. It is about allowing reality to teach lessons that words could not. You may have explained your feelings many times. You may have expressed your needs clearly. You may have given chance after chance, hoping things would improve. But sometimes people do not truly understand the impact of their actions until they experience the results firsthand. When your presence is removed, he no longer has the luxury of assuming you will always stay. The certainty he once relied on begins to disappear. He starts recognizing moments when he could have done better, communicated better, or appreciated you more. Reflection often begins when comfort ends. As days and weeks pass, the weight of those missed opportunities can become impossible to ignore. He remembers the times you stood by him, the sacrifices you made, and the patience you showed. What once seemed ordinary now appears valuable because he understands that it is no longer guaranteed. Respect often grows when people realize that every choice carries a consequence. By choosing to walk away with dignity, you communicate that your love is valuable and your presence should never be taken for granted. The lesson becomes clear. Meaningful relationships require effort, appreciation, and respect. When a man finally understands that losing you was the result of his own actions rather than your lack of care, he often begins looking for a way back. Not because you chased him, but because reality showed him exactly what he had lost. One of the greatest shifts that happens when you walk away peacefully is that you stop chasing and start attracting. For so long, your focus may have been on trying to make someone see your worth, understand your feelings, or choose you the way you wanted to be chosen. That pursuit can become exhausting because it places your happiness in the hands of another person. The more energy you spend chasing someone else's attention, the less energy you have available for your own growth and fulfillment. The moment you decide to step back and redirect that energy toward yourself, everything begins to change. Instead of wondering what he is doing, you start focusing on what you are doing. Instead of seeking validation from someone else, you begin building confidence from within. Your priorities shift from gaining someone's approval to creating a life that genuinely makes you happy. This change creates a powerful transformation. People are naturally drawn to those who have purpose, confidence, and self-respect. When your world no longer revolves around one person, you become more interesting, more independent, and more emotionally strong. You stop operating from a place of need and start operating from a place of abundance. What makes this so powerful is that attraction often grows in the absence of pursuit. When someone realizes that you are no longer trying to convince them to stay, they begin to see you differently. The attention they once took for granted is no longer available on demand. The person they assumed would always be waiting is now busy creating a meaningful life of their own. As you continue moving forward, your confidence becomes visible. Your happiness becomes genuine. Your peace becomes undeniable. These qualities create a magnetic energy that cannot be forced or faked. They come from knowing your value and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. Ironically, the moment you stop making someone the center of your life is often the moment they begin paying closer attention to you. They see your strength, your independence, and your growth. They recognize that you are no longer chasing them because you have discovered something far more important, your own worth. And when you truly understand your worth, you naturally attract what is meant for you instead of running after what is not.